Good morning. I want to talk about textures in foods and internalized ableism. Um, so I'm autistic, and um, something that tends to come with that is kind of stereotypically known, is sensitivity to sensory items. And for me, that particularly means noise. My hearing is particularly sensitive out of everything else. But I always wrote off people who said they had issues with texture in food. I always wrote off people who they're like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like the texture. And I always just thought it was such bullshit. I always thought, and there's a couple reasons for that. There's a couple reasons that I was always so ready to write people off for just being whiny little brats when they were complaining about the texture of their food. Part of it was something that I've seen a lot in neurodivergent people who were not allowed to be themselves, not allowed to be different growing up. For one, you learn to mask a lot of things, but you also have so much you have so much resentment tied up with those traits that you were told not to show and that you were ridiculed for. Sometimes you had to suffer. And so it becomes really hard until you are healed, until you have faced all of that shit, until you have faced your own internalized phobia shit and discrimination. You're gonna have a lot of feelings that crop up when you see somebody else doing that thing that you're not allowed to do, right? And so I grew up really poor, and so for me and for a lot of people who have issues with textures in foods for whatever reason, they're you eat the food or you don't eat. That's how I grew up. Now, my experience of that was a little bit extreme because there often wasn't food. There often was not food when I was growing up. So it really wasn't just the fact that it was, you eat this or you don't eat. It was, I haven't eaten in a day and a half and I'm like 10 years old. And so this thing that is revolting in my mouth and that I have trouble swallowing and that it's gonna upset my stomach, it's either eat or don't eat. That's how I grew up. So that puts a whole new level of bad feelings around those things. So of course I went into adulthood and I was like, how fucking dare you have preferences? How fucking dare you have complaints about what you're eating? Because I grew up not being able to afford that. A lot of times in my adulthood, I have not been able to afford that. I have learned now, like, a lot better how, I worry a lot about becoming homeless because I've got, 2 months worth of savings or 2 months worth of bills saved up, and I refer to my savings as 2 months away from homelessness. I spent all winter being worried that, homelessness was going to be a very soon inevitability, and I was trying to figure out how to handle that. And it ended up being fine. I ended up not becoming homeless this last year. But it's gonna remain a threat Probably for as long as I have a savings that I call 2 months away from homelessness, right? So, yeah, for a long time, a lot of my internalized ableism was a lot of the how dare you? How dare you be such a fussy fucking bitch that, oh, you don't like your food. And because I was bitter. I have been underweight most of my life. I'm 35 and I'm still struggling to like eat more than 1,000 calories a day because I don't know how meals work. That's why I always get along with people who grew up in the system. You just don't know how shit like that works if you were never raised around it. So coming back to textures and foods, you have to face the fact that you had to suffer more, or you had to suffer in a unique way. And be okay with that and know how to work with it. And yeah, I think there's a level of maturity where, you know, you have to make, like, yeah, this is not ideal, but I do need to eat, so how do I work with what I've got? That's just how I cook, you know? But, you know, I'm to a place that, you know, I have the privilege to be able to keep around what I like to eat. And I use the word privilege as in, it should be a right. Food should be a right. Starvation shouldn't have to be anything that any of us worry about, right? But survival is not guaranteed in this country. Yeah. That's where my head's at today. Don't ridicule each other. Ask questions. Find textures that you like to eat.